Okay, so here's part 2 regarding Habakkuk chapter 3. Now, verse 1, I think it's reads a little different. I'm suggesting that it says a prayer for having embraced emptiness. Not exactly erroneous utterances, embraced emptiness. How wonderful. That's Pei Lamed Aleph. That's taken from the word.
Sorry to interrupt, but what page on the notes are you on?
Page 6. How wonderful to identify the vermin. It's like, where's the problem? Where's the louse, the bed bugs? We mentioned the word Peshin. Peshin was to search for bed bugs and delouse, and 2-3 words to have the same basic meaning. The emptiness is filled with music, invigorated by becoming an expert, versed in Paleo-Hebrew. Somebody have said, gosh, you're always about the same thing. Every time you read these verses, you always bring it back to saying, it's about the Paleo-Hebrew. And it's like, it seems like it is. And whether I'm projecting that in or that's actually what it's saying, it sure looks like it to me. So here, what I've done here, pages 6 and 7, is and just for the heck, just of it, so you'll hear the words, I'm going to read these through. And these are all the words that we just read, pronounceable with English letters. Yahweh, Shemati, Shemaka, Raeti Yahweh, Pa'oleka Bekarev, Shanim Chai Yahu Bekarev Shanim Tudia Beregez Rachem Tezakur. Aloha me Timan Yavoa Ve Kadosh Mahar Paran Selah. Kesa Shamim or Shemaim Hodu Vete Halato Malaya Haaretz. There, that was verse 3. Now, this is what I said in the very beginning. Somebody might think that I'm absolutely butchering the phonetics of this. But I put this on here so that if somebody wants to set this to music, this is basically expressing the consonantal value of the letters. The lowercase letters are the vowels, and whether that's exactly accurate, some people say, hey, it was the Masoretic scribes that stuck those vowel points in, so you can't trust it. Whatever. You could give the default ah sound. So here, verse 4, ve naga, or is it va naga? Ve has the 2 dots underneath, and it's like ve is the letter vav. What I've done here, sometimes the letter bet has a dot in the middle, in which case it's a B, and sometimes it doesn't have a dot, so it's a V. The pay, if it's a dot, sounds like a P, or if there's no dot, it's a PH, like an F. So I've used the letter F. I've used the capital letter V for, sometimes it's the Vav, sometimes it's the letter bet, like Ve Naga, that's a Vav, Ka'aur, Te Haya, Karanim, Mayadu, Lo, Vashem, Chavion. Well, that V there would have been a letter bet, Chabion, but there's no dot in it. So it's Chavion Ozea. That's the hidden citadel. So the O would be the letter Ayin. Z is the Zion. Ayin, Zion, Hey. So it'd be Ozea or Hosea. Not exactly Hosea. That's a similar sounding word like the prophet. Verse 5, Le Fanayo. And again, the capital U is at the Vav. If the Vav has a dot above, it's generally spoken as an O, and if the dot's on the side, it's the U sound. So again, whether those are accurate, you could change them if you want to, or you could just give it the ah vowel, but that's up to you. Like I said, if I can't even say the word El Al and have somebody know at an airport that I'm talking about the airline in Israel, don't trust me for the pronunciation. But these are just like the word arets. E-R-E-T-Z. Well, that's because it starts with an aleph, aleph resh zadi, and it's like It's kind of silent, but it's not the A sound. And I've drawn the ayin omad here. That would be an ayin, but sometimes the ayin is an A. Again, I've not tried to give you accurate letters. That's on the other pages. This is for a close, hopefully close pronunciation. So verse 5, le fanayo yelaka. So it looks like it's saying yelk, but every capital letter you could give the A sound. So it would be yalaka, even though it's Y, capital Y, lowercase e, capital L, capital K. La fenayo yalaka daver veyatse re shafa le ragelyo. That's your feet at the end, regal. Verse 6, Omad veya medad eretz rea veyatar goyim veyatepetzetsu. Harari is the name of that husband and wife. Shoshana Harari plays the 22-string harp, 10-string. He makes harps over in Jerusalem. Harari Od, that's Ayin Dalet. Shachu gaveot olam halekiyot olam lo. Verse 7, Tachat aun raiti ali koshen iragazon iriaut aretz medin. Anyway, I'm not going to keep reading all that. It'll probably just be torture to somebody's ears. I'm just showing you basically what I tried to write out. And if someone wants to turn that into the lyrics of a song, how many years has Habakkuk chapter 3 been sitting there and he's saying, there should be a song? Like, well, if like I said, when I read the Stones to Knock translation, it's like, well, this is a pretty rotten song other than maybe the last sentence almost. Verse 18 and 19 is about the only thing to sing about, but the way that I translated the whole chapter, it seems like, wow, that whole thing is worthwhile. And then the word that I was talking about, which is lamed mem nun zadi het, which is the next to the last word in the last verse. That's the word that they're using on Yama Ensemble's song. Nun zadi het in the dictionary means to make brilliant, conquer, vanquish, endure forever, immortalize, glory, eminence, the juice of grapes, victory, triumph, perpetual, disputing polemics, which is arguments, shine illustriously, and the word for overcomer. So remember hearing a Christian song on the radio, I'm an overcomer. And it's like, it doesn't, just using that English word doesn't capture what all this other stuff is about. And in Revelation, I think it's chapter 3, Yahusha says, to he who overcomes, to he who endures, I will give the right to sit with me on my throne and to be, and then he describes the different rewards. To he who overcomes, to he who will, this word, lamed mem. Lamed means unto or regard or aim at by this objective. Mem, be the one who is nun zadi het. There's a couple other things that I had, just so you know, Kurt, and for anybody else that is looking at this, the page 1 that I put up as notes today was, I believe, the last page of last week's. And so on the top of that, it says Habakkuk 3:9. And that was where last week I had just extracted that 2 verses, 9 and 10, and rendered those. And then at the bottom it says 3:17 and 18. even when WTF hits the fan, in Yahweh I will rejoice, Yahweh is my strength. I mean, that was like the kind of what those words are saying. But then I started over, Aleph and Bet, and I think last week I went through 3 or 4 verses. So if you go on to page 2, the word for and there, Basem, Chavion, that's that word hiding place, and then Ayin Zion Hey, which is glory, fortress, strong, firm, mighty, fierce, splendor, expressed or made evident. Ayin Zion is that word Oz, and then the Hey is the expression as the suffix. And what I'm saying is that it seems like that is the letter Vav, because to make something evident, to make accessible, to bring to our attention is like causing a bridge. And the letter Vav means nail. It means to be attached. It's the masculine suffix, but a bridge also is a type of attachment device. And the idea that verse 4, shining bright like light, but that word Nun Gimel Hey means to shine bright, but it also means to revise or correct a text. But Nun being a prefix, put the other prefix Hey Gimel Hey, and it means steer, navigate, spell words. So it's all going back to what we're doing by this very study, looking at the Paleo Hebrew and reworking the translation that we were offered by other people's efforts of years past. The next line, verse 5, which I say line up with the Zion, is lifnei, ending in a vav. Well, that word panei, lamed pe nun yod, means face, and it means to be in the presence of, or turn the countenance toward, or belonging. That which you see in the dictionary, it also means that which is its, the matter of its concern and attention. So he who makes this his own, like the shining of Moshe's face was that he was just in the presence of Elohim, to regard these letters not just like we're archaeologists looking at ancient artifacts buried in the dirt, but this is Yahuwah's own shining face coming through these words, equating the Aleph Bet and the understanding of it to that word, that famous word of the Gospel of John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word. That's this. And that light exists as a place of this glorious splendor, the horn. So that brings up the correlation to Zechariah. It's either chapter 2, verse 1, or the last verse of chapter 1, depending on which translation you have. And it says 4 horns. He sees 4 horns, and he says, well, what's going on with that? Oh, the horns that dispersed Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem, and that oppressed so hard that no man could lift his head. Are those foreign horns? Or is this because Israel turned its back and forsook the Quran, the horn, strength, power, glory, might, resources, shining radiant splendor of Elohim himself? So the video that we did a couple of years ago, based on explaining that, I think there's 2 verses there at the right between chapters 1 and 2 of Zechariah that's associated with this. And then so this in the position of the Zion, verse 5, the one who will walk with this as his attended, as his attention attended to, the dabar, the matter, the word. See, it's translated plague. So if you look at the translation that they gave in Stone's Tanakh, you'll never see where these words come from. So these pages here, page 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, is basically all written out where you could see the analysis of every word, and then where I broke it down and related it to which letter it seemed to fit with. The one whose feet custom, that's where I have the exclamation point, the kind of with the lines coming out of it, Custom, habit, tradition, the word feet. Hugo was talking about that word feet a couple weeks ago, regal. It's where we get RGL, which is where we get the word regalia, regal, regulation, regulated, regular. But then also, if you change the L and the G with the G and the L, you get relegate and religion. And that's the study that Isaac Moseson has done. So when I mentioned the book, Origin of Speeches, you'll see that he's talked about, I think there's 7 basic things that has happened throughout the languages, morphing, permutating since the Tower of Babel, how the languages spin into other words. And that's one of the ways. They'll take 2 of the letters and they'll twist them around the other way. And Isaac Moseson was able to track thousands of words to come right out of Hebrew by reversing the trail, like the breadcrumb trail of, what was it, Hansel and Gretel? You can reverse engineer language doing the exact same thing. So anyway, I'll give you another chance here for anybody that wants to talk about this. Go back to the beginning and say, at the Aleph.
So when you're back at the beginning, what page are you on?
This is page 1, at the Aleph position, where it basically says, okay, this is the way it all works. Aleph, this is the, see, if you don't believe there is an Elohim, or if you believe that he doesn't bring reprisal upon the wicked. So the way to look at Habakkuk here is to realize it's playing right off of chapters 1 and 2. And Yahweh has said, we've talked about this numerous times in the past, in the book of Proverbs, Elohim, Yahweh says, he who turns his ear from hearing the Torah, even so, that word even so is gam, gimel mem. And gimel mem is like this mound or this pile. What does that got to do with a mound or a pile? Well, how do you get something piled up? If you've got a bunch of wood over there and you want to pile up a pile of wood over here, you pick it up, you bring it over. Then you go back and you pick up another piece and you bring it over. And then you go back and you get another piece. So gimel is this back and forth, piling up something where you've gone and gathered it. So what I'm saying is that the way to analyze the language works the same way. If you refuse to hear the Torah, or you haven't ever heard the Torah, that's a different matter. But if you intentionally turn your ear away, he who turns his ear from hearing the Torah, gimel mem, it's translated even so. It's this mirror back at you. His prayers are an abomination. Come on, abomination. Well, why should any prayer be an abomination of a human pouring out their heart to their God, their creator? Because the word abomination, if it's the word I think it is, it means something which is like a tumorous lump. A tumor. The cells aren't functioning properly. They've been taken over by some other kind of growth, destroying the functioning of the cells as they were designed by the Creator. Even so, your prayers are stopped, are plugged, are ineffective, don't work the way they're supposed to, like eating something which abominates you. It doesn't make you a horrible person, not that kind of like the abominable snowman, not that type of a thing, but it means they don't work. It doesn't function. It doesn't allow circulation. There's no flow.
Eric, this
Yeah.
It correlates with Hebrews 6 verse 4. If you want to take a minute and take a look at that, you'll see what I mean.
You want to tell us?
It says, for it is impossible for those who were once enlightened and have tasted of the heavenly gift and were made partakers of the Holy Spirit and have tasted of the good word of Elohim and the powers of world to come, if they shall fall away, to renew them again unto repentance, seeing that they crucified to themselves the Son of Elohim afresh and put him into an open shame. So that is just to support what you said. It's different than someone that hasn't heard the Torah, but someone that's heard the Torah and turned away from it. It says it's impossible to bring him back.
So this first phrase here, where it says Yahweh Shamati Shamaka, Shin Mem Ayin is the word for hear or listen. Tav Yod is the suffix that literally usually is translated as either I have or perhaps I will. And then Shamaka is you listen. So I have listened, you listen. There's no therefore here, but once you've learned the Torah, you've learned the Aleph Tav, you've learned what Yahuwah has said all through his words, you realize it's a reciprocal relationship. If we are listening, then he's listening to us. He's already been speaking and we're not listening. So we're the ones by our action who has stopped things up. And so if you go back to the first 2 chapters and you realize it looks like all the evil people are getting away with everything. No, wait a minute. Nobody ever gets away with anything. And whether it's played out in this life or in the life to come. So I've made mention in the past that I thought, my personal assessment of the movie called Jean de Fleuret and its sequel called Manon of the Spring is the grandest example of that, you might say, the predicament of Habakkuk 2 of any movie I've ever seen. At the end of the first movie, you're feeling like Habakkuk saying, what the heck? Why don't you ever deal with the bad people so that they'll stop? And then when you see the end of the second movie, you go, oh gosh, it's so severe. It's so severe. Wow. The way that justice, mishpat, plays out is so severe that if that movie, Manon of the Spring and Jean de Fleuret, is anything like reality, I mean, it's a French movie, English subtitles, it's like you do not want to mess with the way Yahuwah has built this universe. And if you think that bad stuff isn't going to happen to the bad people, you have no idea it's like he said of Nineveh, they don't know their right hand from their left. So what I'm saying is that to take the time to go through, we could go through, if you want, word for word, line by line of this whole entire chapter. If there was anything that you have all looked at that you want me to look closer at, we'll elaborate it right now if you would like. When it says, I hear, you hear, or I hear, you listen. I fear, or Yod Resh Aleph is the word fear, but Resh Aleph, in this case, Resh Aleph Tav, means to see, or to allow to comprehend, or to allow to see. Yahweh, you, and then there's that word Paul, Pei Ayin Lamed. You cause, that's where I turn that into the idea of operation functioning. In other words, why isn't he, as it said in chapters 1 and 2, why isn't he bringing reprisal upon the head of the wicked? Why do they seem to prevail over the righteous? It's because Israel hasn't and wasn't even back then walking in Yahweh's ways. Yahweh said, Israel, you're my people. If you would walk in my ways, it would all happen. It's an automatic flourishing, but Israel has resisted ever since the beginning, ever since the very beginning. Yahweh even said to Moshe, just step back, I'm going to kill them all. These people just drive me nuts. They're stiff-necked, rebellious people. I'll make a new nation out of you, Moshe, instead of out of the genetics of the, you might say Abraham, even though Moshe is still of Abraham. But I'm just saying that Israel has bugged the bejeebers out of Yahuwah ever since the first beginning. But he still has invested in us. And for us to see and have a fearful regard, knowing that if we would just do what he said, there's this automatic paul it would all work. It would all function. And that he'll make it function. And then the second phrase here, in the midst of years. But that word year is shana. It's the plural, shin nun yod mem. But shana, shin nun hey, literally means year. The change of, where it goes back the other way around, but it means to be varied, or to turn angry, or to like two rows of teeth fighting like a football teams on a scrimmage line. It literally means hatred, sleep, displaced, teaching, or repetition. So in the midst of everything's being taught wrong, you look like a big, ugly monster god of the Old Testament. Everything's completely bamboozled, lied about. Nobody knows what the heck is going on. Chet yod yod hey vav. Well, chet yod is the word for life, and then yod hey vav, pronounced Yahu, so it's chai Yahu, is the verb to exist. So regardless of the lies and the death, the reality of life exists. In the midst, and he repeats, be karav shanim, in the midst of all this perverted instruction, disguised where he has shown to have a different countenance, make known, you might say this is a plea to say, would you please, at the right time, at the right place, somehow make known, though we're deserving, you might say, of ragaz, anger, wrath, agitation, and vexation, please make rachem, comfort, compassion, and womb remembered. Tav, Zayin, Kaf, Vav, Resh, Zakur. Well, that's what's happening with this study that we're doing. The other verse that we talked about last week is verse 3, Aloha, Aleph Lamed Vav Hey. Aleph Lamed is to deity. It's also motion toward. Mem Tav Yod Mem Nun. Well, Aleph Mem Nun is amen, or so be it. Yod Mem Nun is Yemen, like Ben Yemen, son of my right hand. So Yod Mem Nun is right hand. So if you're standing at the shore of Israel, you might say, at the Mediterranean Sea, facing east, Kedem, the ancient, to your right hand is the south, and that's where Yemen is, down at the tail end of what we think of as Saudi Arabia. That's why Yemen is south. But Mem Nun, or Mem Yod Nun, has to do with image, likeness, description, or right hand. Arriving from the right hand of power, image, likeness, description, that's what Yeshua is known as. So I can see right here, and it just so happens that it falls into the fourth consideration, the fourth phrasing. Please make your knowledge known would be this tether of the gimel. In the midst of changes, the letter bet means other, different, number two, with or against. So the aleph is, this is the way it works. Bet is things have gone wacky. Gimel is make your tether still viable. And then Dalet is an expression of his extending this arm reaching down to us by Yeshua coming here for us. Arriving from the south, I wouldn't say it means south. It's the word that is translated south, Yemen, but it has to do from this pregnancy arriving yet. See, it's the word vav meaning and, but it can mean yet. So even though he's coming down here to be amongst us humans, yet kadosh, the vav is just this linking letter. Mahar, from the mount, but hey resh also means pregnant. Mem hey resh, hasten speedily, train, practice, skilled to acquire a wife by paying for her, is also the word mem hey resh. Well, why did Yeshua come here? To acquire a wife by paying for, paying what? Being crucified so that he could rise from the dead? You see, if you don't understand, or if you don't believe the New Testament gospel narrative, you would never plug that in to that verse, especially in that position of the Dalet where Yeshua said, I'm the Dalet. I'm the Dalet. I'm this Dalet in this position. It can mean that. And then the word Paran, like I said earlier, Paran, Mount Paran, like Mount Hood or Mount Whitney. It's like, what is Paran? Pei Aleph Resh Nun. Well, nun being the suffix is that one which is engaged in that action. Pei Aleph Resh, Pa'ar, headdress, glory, adorn, beautified, bows or branches, red, black, glow, praised. This is like this, to think of these bows or branches of this tremendous headdress or this diadem makes me think of Native Americans with the eagle feathers and this like this glorious. So this is saying that it was the prestige, the adorning, glorious headdress. Mind on fire, you might say, head on fire, like Bet Resh Aleph Shin, Bereshit Yod Tov. Bet, the condition of Rosh, that's head. Aleph Shin is the word fire. So even the word Bereshit can be seen as, this is the head on fire. It's like, woohoo! Wow! Well, that's the same as the word Paran. You can see that if you're looking at the dictionary and you're studying the spelling of words. But if you just think Mount Paran, you'll never see it. But to plug Bereshit, the first word of the first verse of Genesis, into this verse, verse 3 of Habakkuk 3, and that's to say Mahar Paran. Okay, I can picture that he had this big idea that was so outrageous. Well, we could talk about this some other time, but I think it's Proverbs. I think it was Proverbs 8, might have been 12, but anyway, it talks about before there was even hills, or he covered himself with dust. I think it's talking about wisdom there or something. But anyway, the point is, it can be read, or I read it one time as saying, he's got this big idea to cover himself with dust, to come down here and put on flesh, and that even his angels around him were going, what? Are you kidding me? That's crazy. Who would think of such a thing? I'm going to do it. I'm going to come down there and I'm going to be one of them and even go through these tortures of crucifixion and death. And they were thinking, you're nuts. You're insane. Who would do? But to him, his head on fire with this Paran. Oh. See, part of doing these translations, it's not just reading words, it's picturing this whole other time, this whole other space of getting back into Elohim's mind and heart of why he decided to do this anyway. And when you realize he did all this to acquire us, to acquire you as his Kadoshi, that's why he did this. That's why these words are still here. And then this last phrase in verse 3, kaseh, kaf samik hey, it means throne, covered, or covering, shemaim. Well, the covering of the heavens, that's the Mazarot. Hodu, hey vav, dalet vav, praise, glorification, but it's also telling this story. Ve tav he lamed tav vav, ve tahel to, brilliant, glory, fame, renown, filling the earth. Melot, mem lamed aleph hey, or it's all across the expanse of the entire earth is telling the story. So it doesn't say the word Mazarot, but the throne, or that which covers, Kaf Samik Hey, but Samik, remember, like the menorah, is this engineered structure. So Kaf means like or as. This engineered structure expressed heavens. It doesn't say in the heavens, but that's the way Hebrew is structured. Those little extra words, in and the, and all these little filler to make it easier to read don't exist. So you, if you're trying to read this, are having to plug in, what is this trying to tell me? So then I can appropriate this last half of verse 3 as saying the big idea to have Yeshua be birthed through a pregnant woman is also going to be the story told, which is, you might say, his majesty of this throne. What is a throne? The word kaseh means covered, and it's like, what has a throne got to do with being covered? Well, you might build it out of wood and cover it with gold, or you might build it out of wood and cover it with upholstery, in which case these heavens are covered with stars with mazarot. It's his praise of renown across the face of the earth, that everyone on earth can see it. Yeah, but nobody pays attention because we've all forgotten what it's there for, other than navigating if you're a sailor. But now that we have other instruments, we don't even need to look at the stars. Sorry, I couldn't see what you said there, Hugo. But what I'm saying is that we could go through literally verse by verse and realize, why is Habakkuk saying this? Again, if you look at the English translation that we've been handed, I don't see any of this. It's rather disturbing. It's kind of like a throwaway chapter. This validates basically everything we're doing by doing this particular study of looking at what he's saying. I think there was one other place that you might say the word verse 11, chapter 3, sun, moon, positioned, and then that word Zion, Bet, Lamed, Hey. Well, it's a dung beetle, a beetle that lives in manure. It eats. It also is to throw manure fertilizing. And then the next word is Laor, unto light, or according to light. So does that Lamed literally mean either you live in manure or you live unto the light? Well, you got the sun and the moon positioned. So see, the placing of these words, then the word is chatzika, chet zadi yod kaf. Kaf suffix means you, yours, and chet zadi is the word for arrow, but it's also partition, which is to separate or make a distinction. Then the words is yod, hey, lamed, kaf, vav. So the vav suffix, typically it's translated as he or it, in which a lot of times it's they, sometimes it's even you. Halakha is the way you walk. So he's saying, listen, whether we live in shit or whether we live in the light, Yahweh, you make the distinction. Gee, I'll pick this guy to be blessed and that guy to be cursed. No, he's saying those who walk as directed. So the word for directed is lamed, nun, gimel, hey. Naga, well, that's that same word that was back at the beginning. The word hey, gimel, hey. Haga is rudder, helm, steering wheel. To meditate, to ponder, to navigate, to spell words phonetically. But nun gimel hey, if you look in the dictionary, means directed, and nun gimel hey means shine bright, to revise or correct a text. The very act of finding this is trying to correct or revise the text of Stone's Tanakh English translation. What's he trying to say? And then this word bet resh kuf Barack, like the president of the United States, Barack Obama, that word Barack, like lightning bolt. But bet can be read as the prefix letter, meaning in the condition of, and resh kuf means only, exclusively, nothing but this. And then the last word, chet nun yod tav kaf. Kaf suffix means your. Chet nun yod tav means lance or spear. So this means it could be read as lightning bolts are your spear or your lance. But het noon, or het noon yod, grace, favor, amnesty, encampment, provision, graceful, charming. Those who walk as directed, revising the text to be accurate, navigating according to the consonantal spelling, which is to say, look at each letter as milestone markers or landmarks or billboards or the stars by which we navigate. By reading every single letter and navigating accordingly, meditating on what each one means, it's like being guided by the lightning bolts to Yahuwah's encampment of favor, grace, and provision. What happened to the big ugly monster God of the Old Testament? He was only like that because we were hating his stuff, his words, his Torah. And the difference between being a dung beetle or one who lives by his chanit is whether we personally choose to halakha naga, as he said. How do we do that? And this whole thing, we've mentioned this before, mentioned again, because it's very specifically, somebody says, what does he want us to do? What's it all about? How difficult, 613 laws, oh my God, 613 laws. When I first, back in 2002, was going to a Torah study and heard about that, it's like, whew, wow, okay. You know, it's like somebody says, here, you got to run 10 miles. It's like, okay, as fast as you can. Or somebody said, you have to do 100 push-ups. And it's like, okay, I'll see if I can do that. It's like 613 laws. Okay, are you up for it? Well, okay, let's get down to it, you know. So I finally was able to find a book that somebody had published, some Jewish publication, where they had a list of all 613 laws, a big, thick book. And it's like, wow. And it's like, it was written so, in my assessment, badly, I couldn't hardly make any sense of it. It's like, just give me the list. There was all these elaborations and this and that. I couldn't. Finally, I was able to locate a list. And it's like, okay, do justly, love mercy. Okay, walk humbly with your Elohim. Well, there's 3 of them. Give thanks, be faithful, listen to his voice. It's like, hey, wait a minute, what's the problem? These are part of the 613 commandments. Help the poor, help, be kind to the widow and orphan. Honor your parents, okay? Set on Shabbat. Regard the Moedim. It's like, wait a minute, where's this big list of 613 rotten, stupid, horrible, ugly oppressions? And I went through the whole list, and it's like, well, some of the things were specifically for women, and some for men, and some for farmers, and some for priests conducting sacrifices or whatever. And it's like, I couldn't find any that were offensive. And it's like the concept of 613 oppressive restrictions in law has become so maligned that it's rejected as a matter of conscience before even knowing what it says. And so to say, shining bright, walk as directed. How do I do that? What's it look like? And all I can really boil it down to, literally, which is why I keep saying this, is that there's 4 words that he repeats all the time. Mishpat and Zadaka, which is equity, which is right ruling in relationship, and doing righteousness. That's the foundation of his throne. Mishpat and Zadaka. Equitable, balanced scales, and doing what's right, doing good, okay? And then emet and chesed, truth and kindness. Got a problem with that? Well, those are just 4 big main things that he repeats all the time. And what else does he repeat all the time? Don't fear. That's the most often repeated commandment. So don't fear is one of the 613 laws. In fact, he says it 365 times, one for every day of the year. So, boy, is that half the list right there? Anyway, don't fear. Trust him. It's two of them. Trust his name. Call upon his name. Consider his name to be a high tower, a refuge, a fortress for defense, a place to run to. You have to believe that deep down inside. Believe that. His name is a hiding place, a havion, ozah, a refuge of glory, a fortress of strength. And then there's a word that means inaccessibly high, which means even with all their siege engines, the enemy can't reach us when they're there. Believe that. That's one of the commands. His name. How do you know you have access? Because you keep his day. The keeping of the Sabbath day is so huge. He conducted the construction of the universe based on mishpat, balanced scales of equity. What does that mean? When he says he owns this place, the word is kuf-nun hey. Kuf-nun hey means he built it, thus he owns it. Maker and possessor of heaven and earth. Kama Shemayim ve'aretz. Kuf-nun hey is also the meaning of the beam, the cross beam on scales of balance. The word shekel means to buy something. Kuf-nun hey means to buy, because it's you put something in this side and it weighs out on that side. Here's the scales of balance. You put something on this side, and when it's equal, now this is, the exchange is made. He built it, he owns it. That's kana. So because the universe is built on equity, for us to receive or participate in what he offers us, we have to put something in. Otherwise, it's not ours. I'm just trying to give you a simple little sketch of how this works, the significance. He says, you better do something to earn being my people, my favor. Yes, I thought it was a free gift. Oh, no. Sit down on the seventh day. That's what we put in our side of the scales of balance. And what does he put in his side of the scales of balance for us, so that there's a swap? He gives us, he's our champion, our defender. He gives us his encampment. He gives us his grace. He gives us his forgiveness. He gives us all provision and eternal life. But the Shabbat is the sign, it's the token, it's what we were told to contribute on our side of the scales of balance, because everything in his kingdom is built on mishpat, equity, balanced scales of exchange. And so for somebody to say the Sabbath day doesn't matter, it could be any day, that's not what he said. That changes everything, which throws everything out of balance, which means nothing works. And the Moedim in Leviticus 23 are a collective of Sabbath days. So it's not just the seventh-day Sabbath, 52 of them, you might say, one per week of the year, according to the calendar, if that's what the one you're regarding, but it's also keeping the Moedim. So for us to call on his name, find refuge in his name, for us to keep his day and walk in his ways of righteousness, truth, and kindness is about everything, is just about everything he ever said to do. One of the other things we're supposed to do is hear his voice. What's his voice saying? That list of things we just talked about. So the 613 precious laws can be boiled down to why for 2,000 years has there been, since the days of Yeshua, 3,000 years since the days of David, such adversity. Why? Call on his name, sit down on his day, trust him, walk in truth and kindness, righteousness. Why is that such an offense to everybody? And I can't see a whole lot more that he's asking us to do. And for that, we get all this favor and grace and eternal life with him in realms of glory, whatever, whether it's in the heavens or on the remade earth, or however you want to see that, is like, wow, walking in his light. Anyway, that's looking at verse 11. So I think there was one other thing to, I mentioned here at the cough, I have a note, which is verse 9, that alert, vigilant, we talked about this last week, everything looks like he's such a big, ugly monster, but the last three words, Naharot, rivers, Tav, Bet, Kuf, Ayin, tear open like ripping open a valley, Aretz. But the word Aretz, though it means earth, Aleph is the prefix letter meaning I will or I am, and Resh Zadi is where we get the word for run or running with desire, or to assault or take by storm. And the word Baka, Bet Kuf Ayin, not only means to open up like a valley or rip open a ravine like water flowing down a hill, but it means to study or become an expert. So if I choose to translate this as saying, we've been lied about by so much stuff, I'm going to do, doggone it, everything I possibly can to become an expert of this. And I actually, literally, before I ever read this verse, 20 years ago, a friend of mine was telling me that people had done some study, and they said the way the human brain works, the way we're built, is that if you do something, anything, play tennis, work on your little computer, Nintendo or something, you do something for 10,000 hours, you'll become an expert. 10,000 hours. Well, if you work, 40 hours a week times 50 weeks, that's like 2,000 hours. So if you did something full time, it would take you 5 years full time to put in 10,000 hours, and then you'd be an expert. Of course, you could put in overtime and do that a little faster, but it's like, okay, so I determined back in 2005, I got to become an expert at this. I want to become an expert at what this language is saying. And I didn't even know what I was in for or what it looked like. And it's like, I better start putting in time. So whether it's 40 hours a week or 140 hours a week, whatever it takes. My house had caught on fire, and I had to put work into rebuilding it and this and that. But I for whatever reason, the circumstances were okay. I took the time to put in the time of study to get that 10,000 hours as soon as I could. And here we are. Here we are. So you guys get whatever benefit might be the upshot of that. Interesting thing to look at real quick, verse 12, black snake, haunting the earth. The word Bet Zion Ayin Mem means Bet being with, Zion Ayin Mem is anger, wrath, vexed, and indignation. I saw a book in the bookstore a couple years ago. It says The Autumn of the Black Snake. And so what's this about? It's about America in the 1700s. It was talking about what was going on in the days of George Washington before the Revolutionary War, the conflict with the Native Americans that were living all around the Appalachian Mountains. And the title of the book was Autumn of the Black Snake. And it's like, there's no black snake. Whoever came up with that title must have known Hebrew, because Zion Ayin Mem, I think there's maybe with a Newton suffix there, literally means black snake. Anger, wrath, vexed, and indignation. And to read that book and see what our forefathers did, gosh, it's an astounding grace you might say, that this nation still exists as a cohesive people after 200 years of everything our forefathers have, all the atrocities they perpetuated on this continent. Let me put it that way. The next word, Tav Zadi Ayin Dalit. Zadi Ayin Dalit means marching chain gang, step chains, or a restricted step or pace. Zadi Vav Ayin, with a different suffix, noon instead of Dalit, is where you get the word for a wandering gypsy. So sometimes you'll find words where 5 minutes. I'll open it back up, you guys, just 1 second. Let me finish this here. That sometimes you'll find words that 2 or 3 of the letters match, but one of them doesn't. And if you know the value or the meaning of one of those letters, in your mind, you can replace it and still see what's going on. So even though Ayin Dalit means witness or testimony, and it's hyphenated Zadi Ayin Dalit hyphen Aretz, Aretz isn't just earth, but it's I will run, or I will have the freedom to run as desirable, as desired. And this is step chains or restricted walking. So this angry black snake of indignation is restricting our mobility to just flow. That's kind of what they did with all the COVID restrictions last year. Remember that? And then it says Ba'af Aleph Pei, which is nose, character, anger, fury. Dalet Vav Shin is where you get the word dash, which it has to do with grass or tender grass. Don't walk on the grass. Why? Because you'll stomp it, you'll flatten it. It's weak. So it's stomping, flattening the Goyim nations. Again, that looks like this pandemic that was pounded upon the world at large 2020-21, stomping the nations. Well, this lining up with the letter Nun, and again, letter Nun is like this fish, this lightning bolt, this all looks so pertinent to what I can see our days are. And it's like Yahweh has allowed the empowering of our adversaries, because we, collectively, Israel, the only one this is all about, didn't want his stuff, didn't care about his stuff. What stuff? The 613 laws, his name, his day, the way we should walk halakha in kindness and truth, doing righteousness, that stuff. And so for us to change our heart, to change our attention, to listen to his voice and walk in his ways and sit down when he said to, in the beauty of kadoshness, Ifa HaKadosh, he's gonna reach in and change the whole world. That's what Habakkuk was waiting to see. When are you gonna? As soon as my people listen. And it's all brought about in the position of the Zadi, which is the verse 16. My language being made pure and clarified, set to music. It enraged at the living aspect of it being torn out and aborted and ripped apart and lied about. He is shaking with wrath. How does it affect us to say, I'm going to confirm the reality? And so he says, whoever will confirm the reality of my kindness, of my truth, emet and chesed, I will cover them with pleasing comfort in the time when all hell breaks loose on the face of the earth. I have a hope of refuge right there in that verse 16. And that's the Zadi, the sprout. That's the resurrection of Yeshua out of the grave. That's Pei Zadi, where his words come back to life. It all fits with this astounding synchronization. In the Kuf position, yeah, but what if my friend's son died? Somebody else's husband or wife died. Other people are hurting and not getting healed. And it's like, maybe this whole thing is a scam. Maybe it's all a lie. Maybe it doesn't work. Even so, throws into the resh, yet in Yahuwah I will rejoice, and there live or die. Stand. And the word bamot, bima, is a stage or a theater. That's verse 19. Bet mem vav tav yod. Yod means my. Mem vav tav is death. Upon this stage I will die, but or yoderek ni. I tread, I stand, powerful, Yod Dalit. So it's either, listen, this is the stage. I will stand believing Yahweh's words, or I will die. Either way, this is the only option. Okay, well, what a great way. But the word daruk, Dalit Reshvav Kaf, means to tread olives and grapes, which is to say, by us standing with this with his attitude, is what causes, it's the tool, it's the mechanism, the button which he gave us, which causes the restrictions of the oil and wine, nothing on the tree or the vine, to actually start flowing. It's what will rekindle the earth with vitality. That's the amazing thing. Anyway, we're at the tail end again. We got a couple more minutes to go. Is there anybody that wants to say anything?
There's really no more minutes. I'm going to pray, though. Father, thank you for waking us up. Thank you for the message. Please come soon. Please fix this world. It's sad. It's falling apart. It's full of death. It's full of people who want murder and blood. Father, where are you? Please come. In His name, amen. All right, I'll see you guys next week. Shalom.
Thank you, Kurt. Shalom.